This project has been strongly influenced by Alejandro Jodorowsky, Chilean filmmaker. Jodorowsky movies, using metaphor, mythology and poetry, contains numerous poetic acts that uses symbolic objects. For example, in the opening of the movie El Topo, the son buries in the desert his teddy bear and his mom's portrait as a way to bury his childhood. In the Holy Mountain, 7 rich and powerful characters are instructed to burn their money. Following this idea, the first phase of the project was informed by object theatre workshops, interviews with drama therapists, psychotherapists, performers. I came up with different abstract ideas of symbolic objects that required an act, play, writing, performance. Even though it wasn't applied to a specific context, it defined the design method of the project. Leaving the theory aside, I then spent some time reading newspapers in order to find a contemporary issue to apply this method to. As an industrial designer, I wanted to think this act for a wider audience. My attention stopped on articles on hyperemployment at work, about those entrepreneurs who juggle between numerous part-time, temporary jobs and personal projects, and tend to take on too many responsibilities. Work devices, by helping managing the tasks and saving times, does have an impact on the working pace and rhythm, and quite often put more pressure on the worker. I wanted to use design as a way to change consciousness on this idea of productivity and progress, rather than changing the reality of the working environment. For the work in progress, the response to this issue was a personal, purifying ritual in the work environment. Objects in wood are digitally engraved, following the task management system of the worker, who then burns the symbolic object in a ceremonial way. Fire is a mythological and primal energy that renews and purifies. I did a few experimentations around the firing process in my backyard with a ceramist, and also in the context of a performance in Limehouse. My research on ritual, environmental performance, and also folklore made me realize the importance of the ritual to be performed in a specific location, out of the workplace. In ancient working ritual, festivals and ceremonial purifications were performed by the entire community. The poetic act usually occurs in another space to allow detachment and symbolic thinking. The biggest challenge was on finding the location and having the authorization to light a fire in a public space. I managed to get the authorization from a well-known community garden, the Dalston Eastern Curve Garden. To stay specific, I adapted my scenario to Dalston, today's most active borough in London in terms of startups and businesses launching. For instance, the Bootstrap Company is a location for a community of over 300 enterprises and creative businesses. Ben Anderson is a freelance designer, script editor and artist, working at the Bootstrap Company few days a week and at home the rest of the time. He is sharing his studio with a stylist. They hardly see each other, as they have very different timetables.
I think I never stop working. If I am not commissioned for something, I would work on my personal project and work on my portfolio. You constantly have to improve your skills, to be flexible and, most of all, always innovative. I didn't clear out my studio recently. I have a lot of old work. I need to make space, not just physically, but also mentally. Cause when, you have these portfolios full of old drawings, I think it's somewhere there in your consciousness and is still present. Those drawings represent a project I got quite far with. At the end, the project hasn't gone through, so I see it as a kind of failure.
This local ritual invites workers to select work-related papers, symbols of frustrating projects, that are meant to be gathered in a great bonfire. They are representative of a project and the creative work, drawings, research, maps, scenarios. Digital workers give out a long print, the last copy of one of their projects, and seal it in the last copy's wooden container that will go in the fire as well. The fuel coming from the workplace is gathered in the fire structure. Using thermoelectric components, the pit gathers heat and transforms it into electricity. The pole is a symbol of communal life and common engagement. This moment is important for people to agree in having their personal work becoming part of a collective installation.
I selected a frustrating project that finished very quickly. I wanted to be part of this event as I need to feel that this project is finished, completely finished. Let's move to something else.
The project's purpose is to make creative workers slow down, to make them disconnect, not for 10 minutes but for hours, and reconnect with natural forces and people. As opposed to our idea of constant progress, this transformation celebrates work as a cyclical activity.
This piece of paper represents one of the worst times in my life, as I was accused of something I didn't do. So I'm putting this in there to burn up everything that they have done and all that they represent. It goes in the fire.
Can we think of this event and performance for a wider audience? Are there some other symbolic acts to strengthen a community that can be performed, maybe in other locations?